Hi, this is Mark Wahlstrom. Welcome to another edition of Speaking of Settlements, a featured broadcast on the Legal Broadcast Network. Well, today's broadcast is really focused primarily to an audience of industry professionals in the structured settlement area, members of NASTA, members of SSP, and really what brought this whole idea on for me, and the reason I wanted to talk about it, is we've got both of the annual conventions coming up for both organizations. National Structured Settlement Trade Association and SSP, the Society of Settlement Planners. One is a larger organization based in Washington, D.C. The other is a smaller trade organization dedicated specifically to settlement planning. We've got Scott Drake, our studio host here at the Legal Broadcast Network, is going to be a featured guest and presenter at the NASTA convention, and I will be hosting and part of a panel on qualified settlement funds at the SSP meeting in Las Vegas early in May. The reason I wanted to bring this up is there's some interesting trends that I think are worrisome to those of us who have been in the profession for a long time. And that is, I've kind of entitled this little commentary, Back to the Future, is that because of the consolidation of our industry, the number of life markets that are no longer in the structured settlement business, the retreat in the taxable damage area from a couple of the markets that were in it, and really a concentration of only 7 companies writing structured settlements at this time, and only a couple of companies really advocating it on the claims level actively, I'm talking about, is we have a concentration of power in only the hands of a few companies and only in the hands of a few major brokers that, to my mind, are, I wouldn't say controlling NASTA, but they control a lot of the direction, the policy, and the implementation of certain projects. We saw this happen in the late 80s and early 90s. And a lot of what I would consider destructive things for our profession cropped up as a result of this concentration of power on one side of the negotiating table, typically the defense side. And when you have concentration in the power in the hands of a few people, it's not that people are willfully or intentionally trying to abuse things. They're simply going to work in their own best interest. And if you don't have enough balance between plaintiff interests and defendant interests in a particular association, I do think to a large degree that ultimately leads to some abuses and some questionable thinking. For example, in the past, we had the situation where you could only write a structured settlement if you were a defense broker. And our trade association, unfortunately, promoted this concept and was part of a lawsuit called the Wheel case, where that practice was ended. It was blatantly, anti-business, antitrust, anti-competitive, and there was a substantial lawsuit that allowed plaintiff brokers to begin to write structured settlement contracts. Before that, there was the great mythology that was out there for decades, or not decades, but early in the decade of the 1980s, that mere knowledge of the annuity was constructive receipt. There was never a tax opinion, there was nothing on that, but that was always used as a premise, again, to give a negotiating edge, to give a pricing edge to one side of the table. And they did it because the power was concentrated really on one side at that time. The Wheel case, another example. And then of course, we had the recent case of Hartford being sued successfully over the practice of essentially keeping commissions and rebating commissions for an internal program. It was a Spencer case versus Hartford that was settled a couple of years ago. So we've had instances where what people have deemed good business practices for one side of the table were not compensated by having enough dissenting voices in the organization to question those topics. And the people who did question them were, branded as outsiders or pushed outside of the organization. I'm a little concerned that that's happening right now, that we've got, unfortunately in NASTA, some policies in place that if people have anything to do with a factoring company or involved in factoring at all, they're omitted from the organization. And now we have a move that I consider troubling is another fresh look at attacking the integrity of the qualified settlement fund. Now, I know where this originates from. A lot of people feel that single claimant QSFs are bad policy, but the fact of the matter is that there is no ruling one way or the other as to whether a single claimant QSF is good or bad. I personally don't do them. Anyone who knows my practice knows I work in multi-claimant cases, mass torts, the cases that were designed for qualified settlement funds. But my concern is that when we have a very concentrated group of people in power who are strictly defense or primarily defense oriented and are working at, and their primary markets are one or two substantial casualty companies, is that there tends to be overreach. There tends to be an overemphasis, an exercising of power for the sake of power without really thinking through the consequences and the repercussions of these actions. So what I'd really like to do, and again, I will be speaking on the topic of qualified settlement funds early in May. We'll have another couple of shows leading up to it and then a summary afterwards, is we're going to have an industry panel talking about what's going on with qualified settlement funds, what kind of attacks are happening, if single claimant cases are now going to be completely off limits with the life companies at the request of industry forces. I mean, there's no other way to really describe it. And whether or not that's a good thing. Should single claimant cases be clarified by the IRS? Is this something that we as a profession, both SSP and NASTA, should look at jointly? And can we do this in a way that is non-adversarial but is done in a fashion that allows for a really open intellectual conversation about whether or not qualified settlement funds should be allowed on single claimant cases? If they are, what are the exceptions? What are the rules? And do we really want to go to Treasury for clarification on something like this? Or is this something we should leave alone and work out as an industry and as a profession and not do it as a way where we're trying to disenfranchise one group of people on the plaintiff side and also, I think, retarding the growth of our industry by drawing into question the whole idea of qualified settlement funds and their effectiveness in smaller cases. Again, my own personal and professional preference is using them on large-scale multi-claimant cases for which they're designed. But we're going to be doing several shows on this, and I really hope as we go into kind of convention season that the members of NASTA and the members of SSP and the people in our profession who care about our profession take a long, hard look at this whole topic of whether or not going down the road of attacking qualified settlement funds in single claimant cases and enforcing a set of standards that only work for one side of the table and not the other, when there's really no tax basis or logical argument that I've heard that says that you can't use them on single claimant cases other than the fact that it's inconvenient or against the business interests of one side or the other. It's going to be an interesting topic. It's going to be an interesting year, but I really do caution the people in our profession to not exercise power just for the sake of doing it because they can, and to think carefully about what goes on and the process that they intend to follow in this area of qualified settlement funds and 468B trusts. They have the opportunity to really grow our business and to be something where we further the structured settlement profession, the settlement planning profession, and are able to do some unique things for people and to not arbitrarily just lash out at these, because when that's happened in the past, when power's been exercised just for the sake of exercising power, the history has been that lawsuits and regulation and problems follow, and I don't think any of us want that. I think we want to avoid that, and we want to continue to grow our business and profession. So that's my lecture for this week to the settlement profession. Take it for what it's worth, and I'd love to hear from you if you have a dissenting opinion or you think that you've got something productive and positive to say about this topic. We'd love to have you on as a guest. Just give me a call or email me, and we'll have you on the air. This is Mark Wahlstrom. Thanks for joining me on Speaking of Settlements this week. I'll see you again next week, and hopefully I'll see you at one of the conventions this year. Bye, we'll see you again.